Okay, it looks like we're live. Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm with Military Saves, where we help service members, military families, and veterans save money, reduce debt, and build wealth. Thank you so much for tuning in to our midday money chat. Today we have Rebecca Casarez of ProAdvisor CPA. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to all the amazing things that Rebecca has done and continues to do for the community. So she's the founder of ProAdvisor CPA, a virtual CPA firm that offers advisory services in bookkeeping, tax, and payroll services nationwide, with a focus on advisory services for individuals and business owners. Rebecca is a licensed CPA with a bachelor's and master's in accounting. She has over 10 years of experience working in management and administrative roles with expertise in business accounting, taxation, and app implementation. So today, she is going to join us and talk about tax tips. Rebecca, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, and one thing I didn't mention in your introduction that I think is very unique is that you're a military spouse. Your
I
husband is a
am.
veteran, and you two are in business together. So, if you could please tell me a little bit about the company that you and your husband own, ProAdvisor CPA.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Jackie mentioned, I am a CPA. My husband and I started this company after he separated from the Army. He was infantryman in the 82nd Airborne, and he was a Green Beret, served 10 years in the Army, combat tours to Iraq and Afghanistan, moved a bunch of times. And throughout that time, we worked together. We were, partners in life. And when he separated, we decided to be partners in business too, which is not always recommended, but we did it and we are really excited about it and we do it well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, not everybody could pull that off. Definitely not for the faint of heart, but I love that you've had hardships before with the military, and I'm sure you've spent time apart, being geographically dislocated, you've moved.
Yes.
So why not put all those skills together and run a business and have a dream together? I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. We definitely have enjoyed our journey for sure.
Oh, well, that's excellent. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into some of the tax questions since the season is already upon us after a very crazy year.
Yes.
So I want to know what is the most or some of the most common questions you get asked about personal taxes?
Yeah, a lot of them are, well, pre-COVID, a lot of the questions were about filing status. Should I file? Do I have to file? Can I claim a dependent? What about my business deductions? What about my individual deductions? So more generic questions to individuals. So I get a lot of questions about that is, can I claim them? Am I head of household or not? What happens if I move, especially in the military community is, well, what's my tax home? What's my home of, record? Where my domicile? Do I have to claim this income on my state tax return? And there's just a lot of questions about that.
Oh, yeah, understandable because there are so many changes in the military community.
Hmm.
So then, as far as, well, you just mentioned COVID, so we're going to go back to that because what's different this year are the stimulus packages. Many people
Hmm.
receive stimulus, some of them have not yet, but they're expecting it.
Hmm.
How do you account for the stimulus in your taxes?
Well, one is you definitely always, I mean, this is a tax thing no matter what, but always be honest about it with your tax professional or when you're doing your own taxes. If you've received both checks and you've gotten everything you're expected to receive, there's zero to do. You don't have to do anything. You don't put it on your tax return. You don't have to put it in. You just don't need to do it. Now, sometimes it'll ask you the question if you're doing it yourself, or the tax professional will ask it for you, but it's an in and an out. So it doesn't impact your taxes. If you received less than you expected, or you didn't receive the second check or the first check at all, then you will have to get a credit for it. And at that point, you have to, how much did you receive? How much you were expected to receive? That happens a lot with children who are born in 2020. If they don't have a social security number yet, they didn't receive the check. So if you had a child last year, you want to get your social security number first before you file your return, so you can actually get credit for that, because you have to have a social security number.
Oh, excellent tip. And my hats do go off to anyone who had a baby last year. I have a lot of friends who did, and it wasn't the
Yeah.
easiest.
Yeah.
But that's a very helpful tip. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Yeah.
So then my next question, still we're talking about COVID since that's the hot issue at the moment. Should you
Mhm.
extend your tax returns this year?
Uh, I definitely recommend considering extending,
Mhm.
because there was a lot of changes last year. I mean, if you remove the stimulus checks from the conversation, there was so much going on that we don't know if Congress is going to provide any more relief. We don't know if they're going to provide extensions for payments. Last year was the first time that in history, I don't know another time where they've automatically extended returns and payments, because your payments, if you owe taxes, are due April no matter what. And they just extended everything. I don't know if that's going to happen again. They haven't talked necessarily about it. I don't know if it's on the table or not, but if you owe taxes and you can wait to pay it interest free, you might as well take up on that. So consider extending if you can. If you absolutely need to file for getting a house, getting a business loan or a personal loan, or you're expecting a refund and you need it, go ahead and do that, but consider extending for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic that if that is an option and that would benefit your family, then that does sound like a very smart move to take advantage of. I'm sure that could help a lot of people financially. So what I think is unique about the military community is I remember my very first year as a military spouse, and our tax refund came back and it said we were owed like $7,000. And I had been working most of my life as a teenager, 20 something. I had never seen that much money at once. So I thought, oh, this can't be right. We miscalculated. But I realized, no, that actually is the case for a lot of service members. They get kind of one lump sum. Is that a good thing? Or if they want to adjust and maybe get more of that take home pay throughout the year, what would you advise to them as far as exemptions?
Yeah, so one is it's really important to know who you are, know who your spouse is if you're married, if you have children, and understand what the goal of it is. I think it's great when you get a surprise refund. I think it's terrible to expect the refund every year and to just assume that it's going to happen and not have a plan. So life is about planning. If you fail to plan, right? We all know that. So we definitely want to make sure that we're planning for it. If I talk to some high net worth individuals that they are super happy to pay tens of thousands of dollars every year because they know that they're going to get more in the stock market or in their business ventures. And at the same time, I'll talk to other individuals that want a refund because they're not very disciplined at saving. So we'll coach them through the withholding process. We have to figure out step one is, why are you even getting a refund? Great, you got a refund, but what's the purpose of it? Are you putting too much in withholding? Because if you're getting too much income taken out, then we can adjust that if you don't want the refund. But if the reason you're getting a refund is because of credits, that it has very little to do with your withholding. So we have to figure out the purpose and the reason behind it, and then we can kind of coach you through what your goal is.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's very helpful. That's a little more in depth than I thought it would be. And I think this is a really great reason why we've got a CPA and tax professional here to talk with us. And what would you recommend too, because you're right, I know some of my friends, they loved getting that one lump sum because that's when they would either pay off debt, start an emergency fund, but then other friends said, well, the government has basically got your money interest free all year and you could be investing it or you could be building a business. For the people who are getting the one lump sum, do you have any sort of recommendation? I know you said don't always count on it every year. Because I also saw a lot of people just kind of make, I'm going to say, glamour purchases every year. And then they were, scraping by for the rest of the year. So what would you recommend if they know they're going to get a hefty refund? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so always, and I can't stress this enough, I said it already, but you have to plan. You have to plan your life. You have to plan for every dollar that you make, every dollar you spend, every dollar you're expecting to get. I think that, for us, I've seen it way too many times where they do get that one lump sum. Like, you're right, they either pay off the debt, but then if you're not careful, you're just going to go into debt again. And then if you don't get that refund that you're expecting to, now you're behind. So you really want to make sure that everything is on purpose. You live life on purpose. That's my big motto: live life on purpose and with expectation, and look for it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that glamour purchase, so long as it doesn't stop you from putting food on the table and you're not getting into crazy amounts of debt over it. It's like a cashback rewards credit card. Everyone's really big into those, but if you spend more because it's a credit card, then you're not getting enough of the reward back for you. So you just want to make sure that you're really careful about it and understand who you are and how you spend.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about tax scams. So this first year I told you where we got this enormous amount and
Hmm.
I thought this is crazy. We filed online through a service and I
Hmm.
paid an extra $50 or something, I think, to talk to a professional because I just knew that
Hmm.
was wrong.
Yeah.
And she actually found even more money for us, which was unbelievable. But
Yeah.
then she said, oops, someone already used your social security number and
Yes.
filed. So
Yes.
I now have to get a PIN every single
Yep.
year that I
Hmm.
put in. And we ended up having to wait a full year for that tax refund that, here we were thinking it was coming. So
Hmm.
yes, the following year we ended up with like $15,000, which was phenomenal, but hadn't planned for it. Didn't like the fact that someone used my social, like that felt a
Hmm.
bit violating.
Yes.
And I know that the scammers come out right now. This is the time of the year.
Yes.
So that being said, what would you advise? What should we look out for?
So, well, one, you're absolutely right. I'm actually really, really glad you asked this question. It doesn't get asked enough. When Eric was in the Army, I think his social security number got stolen at least 3 times. I don't know if you recall this, I think it was 2010, 2013, something like that. There was a truckload that was stolen of information. Ours was on it. So, in terms of social security numbers, it happens way more than it needs to be. And especially in the military community, when your insurance number is literally your spouse's or your service member's social security number. So, it definitely happens. One is don't panic. Two is don't pay it if there's a notice that says you owe money. Like if you got a written notice, find out for sure if that's the case, because you'll have time on it. There's always a deadline on it. But there's tax advocacy groups in both the IRS and state agencies, so you can call the IRS directly and confirm if it's true. So that's super important. I'm actually going to give you guys a number. I'll say it twice. For the IRS specifically, it's 800-829-1040. It's 800-829-1040. And that's if you got a written notice from the IRS and you're not sure if it's legitimate, call them and they'll vouch for it or not. And then, of course, if you owe it, talk to a professional and see if you can get it reduced. State agencies are all different, so I can't, obviously give out that number. But the second thing is, I'm a big believer in filing your tax returns, whether you have to or not. I talk to, your family members, your parents, your children. Get the social security numbers on a tax return so somebody else doesn't come in and steal it.
Wow. Okay. That is very good. So back to those social security numbers for your kids again, another reason
Yeah.
why you want to get that set up sooner rather
Yep.
than later.
Yes.
Um, Now let's talk a little bit about, because we've been talking personal taxes. I know you
Hmm.
do business taxes as well, and there are a lot of
Hmm.
military spouse and veteran entrepreneurs
Hmm.
who do have their own small businesses. And what sort of information or advice would you give to them if they're filing taxes for their small business?
Well, one is definitely talk to a professional before you even start a business. Do a lot of research into it, because the Military Spouse Relief Residency Relief Act does not always cover if you own a business in a specific state. So you want to make sure that if you're operating a business, you fully understand the extent of what is required from you in that specific city, state, and county that you're operating out of. Two is, depends on the business structure you are. A sole proprietor can deduct certain things. An S corp can deduct certain things. LLCs have certain restrictions. And I mean, even now with COVID, the PPP loan, can you take a second draw? Are you even eligible for it? What about an EIDL loan, or is that coming out again? There's a lot of things that are out there. So make sure that you are organized, that you're thinking more than just what am I going to sell, but also how am I going to account for it? And then, although there are do-it-yourself tax software out there, they're not always the best, and they're definitely not always accurate.
That's very good advice. And I know that a lot of small businesses too, like freelancers, for example, who get paid without any sort of
Mhm.
tax deduction, you can pay quarterly. So you're not hit with this big bill come tax season. Is that something you
Yeah.
work with a lot as well?
Well, yeah, we do work with that. Not only can you're supposed to.
Right.
So yeah, you're required to pay quarterly taxes if you owe a certain amount at the end of the year, which takes, guessing and estimating what you're going to have to pay and then backing into it. So it's definitely an art to tax planning. but if you don't have any, if you started a business, you don't really have a lot of money, you can't afford to hire a professional, take at least 10% off the top dollar for every dollar you make, put 10 cents aside, throw it into an account. And if you're not throwing in estimated taxes, at least you've got either a business savings account, an emergency fund, or the taxes that might be due at the end of the year.
Oh, that's very good advice. Thank you. I appreciate that because I like that you said as well too that it can change per state, and so that's especially important for military families who are moving around and be aware of the laws per state each year. Fantastic. Oh, you're so informative. I'm really enjoying this. So this almost seems like an obvious question. I'm sure our audience is thinking you probably just answered this, but what, as you did mention, I know there are a lot of free resources there where you can get your taxes filed, you can pay for online services, but what are some of the benefits of going to a professional to help you either with your personal or your business taxes?
One is the confidence that you get, competency, what I can't even talk today, of getting it done right. And also having that advice. You spend however long as a military spouse, a working professional, someone who owns their own business, and that's a lot of time that you're an expert in your field. I've been doing this since I was 16. And in some cases, I just know it and I don't have to research it. There's time, there's energy put into it. But also the second one is nobody knew COVID was going to happen. Nobody knew that 2020 was going to hit us like it did. And unfortunately, I saw way too many individuals get hurt because they weren't prepared. I saw way too many businesses shut their doors because their books were 2-3 years behind, or even just a few months behind. And they didn't even have the time to qualify for some of the resources that were out there. So I think just staying on top of it, working with a professional is just really important because you never know when an emergency is going to happen.
Oh gosh, and that actually makes me think of another question. What do you do if your small business did have to close down last year? How is that going to affect your taxes this year?
Yeah, it really depends on the business structure. It depends on if you think that you might be able to get it started back up again. There's actually a lot of resources. I know California had some grants that were out there. Dig deep into your local community. There's free grants, there's loans that are out there. It's not just the big ones that were mentioned federally. There's a lot that's out there that might be able to help keep your business going. But definitely, it depends on if you're paying it personally or not, on whether or not it's going to impact your individual taxes.
Oh gosh, thank you. And for those of you tuning in, obviously a loan is something you're going to be paying back with interest, but a grant is money free and clear. So that's very beneficial to your business. So I'm curious, what is it like running a business with your spouse? And is this something you would recommend to other military couples?
It's pretty awesome. He might be listening now, so
Let's hope so.
I have to be careful. No, it's actually pretty great. Eric and I, we do different things in the company. He's not a CPA. He doesn't do accounting. I'm not a marketing genius and a business development expert, and that's where we come together really well. We met during survival disaster relief training before he joined the military, so we have some pretty crazy experiences going through lots of different obstacles together, which a lot of it just did help us get for that entrepreneur experience. I don't necessarily recommend it for everybody when they're married because it's very trying. It's a trying experience. We have to constantly tell each other, would you say this to someone if they were a founder that you're not married to? Or, would you say this to a different business partner? And we had to constantly, toe the line of respecting each other and recognizing that you can't separate emotion from it. So it's not something I would always recommend, but I'm glad we did it.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, I do know a lot of couples are always looking for what do they do after, the transition out of the military. And so many seem to go into entrepreneurship because of all the skills I mean, the skills, the qualifications, the experience, the hardships everyone's, survived as a military family. So it just seems like a natural fit. But I'm curious because I don't know if everyone could work with their spouse, but I think it's fantastic that you are and that you're serving both the military and the civilian communities. So for those of you, again, I'm going to be tagging ProAdvisor CPA. So do be sure to check them out. You can get in touch with Rebecca and her team if you have any sort of questions regarding your personal or business taxes. And before we go, is there anything else that you would like to add, Rebecca?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, I can be reached. My email is hello@proadvisorcpa.com, and I can be reached on my direct line at 520-200-7520. One thing I did forget to mention are individual taxes, COVID impact. If you received unemployment, it is taxable. Some people think that it wasn't. There was a huge rumor going around that because it was COVID related, your unemployment benefits are not taxable. It is taxable. So make sure you're talking with someone on how to plan for that if you weren't.
Oh, perfect. I actually was one of the people furloughed last year and ended up on unemployment for the first time in my life. However, I opted to have taxes taken out
Taken
of
out.
my payment, so I didn't sneak up and get me this year. So I'm glad you mentioned that because I know
Yeah.
several other people were in that boat this past year.
Yeah.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much. We'll be sure to share your information on our site. I thank you for your time and expertise. You covered such a wealth of information in a short amount of time. That just goes to show the value of working with a professional. So if you're watching this and you're a service member, military spouse, or veteran, and you've got any questions, Rebecca at ProAdvisor CPA is here to assist you. So thank you all for tuning in. Rebecca, thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.